Okay, so we'll go ahead. Thank you for coming. As you can tell, as you can see, this is the title of this workshop. Is this the workshop we're supposed to give at this time?
Yes, that's
Scott? It is. Thank you, Sheila. Okay. Because there's so many workshops. We're just bombarded with. This is why it's a good idea to put it up on the screen before you start. So I want to talk about my experience and my searching of the literature on research collaborations. And it's more of a bias for me because I'm looking more at the social and psychological facets of that, more so than maybe some other kinds of criteria that you might think about. But it will focus on things that will help, or that has helped me to develop collaborations, to maintain them, and kind of how to negotiate those. And there is a literature on this, and you'll see towards the end, there's a new book that's just come out in my discipline, which is psychology, which is a great book. It's classic collaborative teams which have described what worked for them and how they've been able to be successful and stuff. And so I pulled some new stuff from that, from previous versions of this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started, but please interrupt me if you have stories to share or questions or what have you. I'm going to start off with a little definition, or I pulled several definitions of collaboration. These are dictionary definitions. I'll just throw them up here. I do have a handout, and I'll give you that. I thought I'd hold on to it for now, but you don't have to write any of this down. Of course, we'll share the PowerPoint with you too. Working with another or others, what is collaboration, right? On some kind of a joint project, towards a common goal, or creating something new that you couldn't really do as successfully if you were by yourself. Yes, that's what we mean. Shared goals, joint creativity. One of the things that is implicit or explicit in these definitions is the goal part of it, which of course is, if you're working on any task, you typically have goals, contributing to revising each part of the final product. So I like these definitions because they're not really saying the same thing, but they encompass kind of what's involved in any kind of collaboration, but more specifically in research collaboration. So here's a fact. First of all, if you had to guess, you'd probably guess this is true, but there's actually been research done on this question of in certain disciplines. The one that comes to mind, or where I pulled this fact from, was in the discipline area of school psychology. So a couple of researchers looked at very highly productive publishing, grant recipient kinds of very outstanding in the field, and they surveyed them about what they did. And so they discovered lots of things about such highly productive individuals, but they also found things about their collaborative networks. And that was one of the things that was prominent in all of the very successful individuals. And I think that's true if you look around campus, if you think about where you came from previously, people that were really highly productive. How can you be that way? And so I want to kind of build on that, first of all, by talking about different kinds of collaboration and show you the range. So if you're like me, I think of collaboration, I think, who else in my department, or maybe somebody from professional organization that I'm familiar with, can I work with, and am I working with? But it's really much broader than that. There are all kinds of collaborations, as I'll just throw these up here. You can see faculty and student. Do you work with your students? Do you hope your students will continue working with you if they're in a position to do that? That is great. That actually is one of the major kinds of collaboration that these highly productive researchers talked about. Was I work with my students while they're here, but when they go out and develop their own identities, we also continue to work. So that's like, if you can do that, if you're a student, of course you want to do that, I think, because you can maintain that mentoring aspect of that initial relationship. Of course, faculty and faculty, internal, external, what they mean by that is within our campus, within the university context, or outside of that. Do you collaborate with others at other institutions? I've done that. It's a lot of fun. It has its challenges. It's difficult sometimes to meet face-to-face, which is, you'll see, one of the things that is a good idea to do if you can do it. There's also kinds of collaborations with other entities outside of the university, like our community, like industry. There is face-to-face and virtual collaboration. And then I added this as a kind of another criterion, which is how deep is your collaboration, hey, Jane? As opposed to how much surface level. So when I reflect on my collaborations, some of them are extremely long-term and deep and productive, and others are more short-term and more surface level, but I still consider those collaborations. We're able to do something, we're able to actually produce something, but we're not like working together all the time and not really do. So you can consider those as options too. My approach is I try to collaborate as much as I can, whether it's deep, any of these kinds of things. And there's various reasons why that might be something that you'd be interested in. So how actually do you create a research collaboration? I put that up as a question. I have some answers to that, but if you've ever collaborated, how did you get that started?
The only collaboration I've done so far is in my dissertation cohort. We all saw there was a group of PR students, and they were turning out a lot of conference papers. And I'm in journalism. And said, what are they doing? Why are they turning out so many papers? They were collaborating all working together. So that. Yeah. And I, 2 years, I graduated 2 years ago, and I'm still with my cohort member, and she's in Florida still, so we're trying to continue some collaboration. That's how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, neat. Others? Yeah.
I guess just simply put, just casual conversations. So if I go to college, we meet monthly or bi-monthly for like lunches together and just talk about things. And a lot of times in conversations, but that sounds interesting, so it led to a few that didn't end up being sustained beyond the scope of that one piece, but nonetheless.
Yeah. In some ways, I don't know that anybody's actually looked at this question, but it seems like the opportunity to collaborate might actually be higher or more likely when we're still students, when we're like in graduate school. But I'm not sure. Because once we get in our positions, the tendency is to be very tunnel-focused, tunnel vision, and there's other forces that might discourage us from collaborating, which I'll talk about in a bit. So here's what some of the literature says on creating research collaboration or how you can go about doing that. Obviously, when you sit down and you talk to people or you participate in activities where people are sharing things, so a lot of our colleges now are actually proactively doing that. So in my College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, we have kind of a database of faculty interests. And so all we have to do is go on to our college website and look through, and we can find that. I don't know how effective that is. It's like I can find out what your research is that way or other ways, but I'm not necessarily going to go and meet and talk with you. But we're trying to do that, so we have opportunities to share like that. So however you can learn about other people's interests, experiences, and skills, obviously. What do you do when you try to think about your previous collaborations that you have created? What were you trying to do? My guess is you were trying to see how your work related to theirs, or how what they're doing you could bring in, or what you're doing you could bring into what they're doing and sort of stretch. Not too far, maybe. That's too far outside of my area. So I think it's wise to consciously and proactively try to do that. And pardon the grammatically incorrect sentence here, but I found that is also an effective way, is once you have established collaborations, and especially if it's not just a two-person collaboration, but other people. So I've had experience where I started working with one particular faculty member here who was also already working with somebody in his department, and we were working on a common project, but I started to get to know that other collaborator more and realized that he had all kinds of things that relate to what I'm doing and vice versa. And so we started working together too. And so not only did the three of us have still a productive group, but then individually we do as well. And it turns out three of us work together, then two of us also work together on separate projects. And so that's a way to be more productive. This is one of the values of collaboration, of course. Then probably most importantly, for what's most fulfilling for a collaboration would be what is complementing your skill set and your interests. I think that's what we really search for when we try to develop collaborations. What can you bring? What can that person bring to the relationship? I wasn't supposed to say relationships this early in the presentation, but it really is a relationship, and you can think of it that way. And like any relationship, it can be fraught with challenges and dangers and things like that. Okay? Are we good? So here are some of the typical standard benefits of collaborating. Why should you do this? Okay? I put this first because for me, I think that's like the most valuable feature of a collaboration, is that it makes the job more interesting. It makes my own research more interesting, and it's more fun. So I don't think that should be downplayed. I don't think we should look at it in a kind of a clinical sense of collaboration, nor as a selfish kind of thing. I could really, use that person's expertise and neglect the fun and interesting part of it. This probably goes without saying, but again, if you look at people who are highly productive, if you talk to your colleagues who are highly productive, most likely they're going to say, well, I'm working with them. And why is that? Why are you more productive if you're collaborating? Other people, right? You're more accountable to other people, and they are accountable to you. You can do more things at one time, so you can divvy up your resources a little bit more. Of course, you can have too many irons in the fire. I admit to being that, but another aspect of that, one of my mentors, who's still a mentor for me, who's a retired faculty member, likes to say, he said it dozens of times probably to me when I complain about how much I have to do or whatever, is, well, the more you have to do, the more you get done. It's like, yeah, I guess that's the case. And in a nutshell, that is kind of like what happens with collaboration. You are doing more, and then therefore you're going to end up getting more done. If you want to expand your research areas, this is a good way to do that. Depending on where you are in your career, too, I'm at the point where it doesn't have to be related directly to my specialty area or my discipline. So I'll work in some other area just because it's fun and interesting. And in my context here, I do a lot of SOTL, Scholarship of Teaching and Learning research. And so I'll work with faculty that I really don't know that much about what you're doing, but I have assessment and measurement and research design background that I can bring to that. And so that's fun and that's interesting and that's valuable. And sometimes that does expand my own research areas. Of course, not only can you be more productive, you can help your colleagues be more productive. And so there is you'll see a little bit later, one of the slides talks about the mentoring aspect of collaboration. Often our collaborations start with an initial mentoring relationship. That's pretty common, but they also go the other way too. You can actually serve as a mentor in the development of your collaborations, depending on the nature of the people involved. Of course, if you're looking for people's expertise and knowledge and skills, then that's going to also support your own. Wait, there's more. There's more benefits of collaborating. This is where the social, the psychological, the experiential, the phenomenological, pick your term. I have developed long-standing friendships among my collaborators through our research activities. And that makes the job more interesting. It makes it less like a job when we're in this kind of context, I think. You know that many grants now, if not most grants, are explicitly interdisciplinary. And when you see interdisciplinary, you pretty much have to think collaboratively, because I'm not really interdisciplinary. I sort of am, but what they mean is you're bringing in people from different disciplines and different fields. So by having those developed, it actually increases your opportunities potentially for different grant options. Scientifically speaking, I think your research is better. My research is better if I collaborate. Because if I don't, I'm just sitting there by myself, basically. Yes, other people are reviewing my work and critiquing it, but I miss that phase of, why did you say that, or why do you think that? And like a little kid, the little kid that keeps saying, why, a good collaborator is like that. You can be like that if you're a collaborator, and that helps to make our research stronger. And of course, scientifically speaking, it is valuable and it's valued. Sort of valued, because sometimes we get mixed messages, it seems, when it comes to collaboration. And that is a concern. So notice the opposite of benefits is typically what? What's the opposite of benefits? Or costs? Yeah. But I wouldn't call it that, because they're not really costs associated with collaborating. Yes, it takes time and effort, and they might not work out and things like that. But to me, there are really more challenges, things that you just need to be wary of, or you have to try to overcome in order to make sure that your relationships are successful. So what do I mean by that? Well, obviously, it might take you farther away from your research area than you want to go. They're really interested more in this question or this angle to it, and if I do that, then maybe I'm going to be, maybe it's not so clear that it's my area of research, which other people might think that's an issue. Yes? Just that kind of pragmatically speaking, it very well could take, it does in fact, requires you to put time and effort outside of maybe what you'd best be doing. But that too is debatable. What is it that you could best be doing? And you don't really know that. I don't think you really know that unless you start collaborating and make that judgment. So it is really squishy. It's, at least the way I'm presenting it, psychological, social, squishy stuff. Okay. I think it requires you to be less selfish. I think in our indoctrination and our education, we're kind of taught to be very selfish about our research ideas and our research areas. This is how we define a professional identity for ourselves. So when you start collaborating, it's like opposite of what you've been told. It's pulling you away from that professional identity, potentially. Anybody ever been in a collaboration that hasn't been successful? Yes? General contours of why it wasn't successful, Alicia?
It falls apart when people realize that it has to be time and effort. So they're really good at doing the ideas, and yes, let's get this together, and then once it starts going, okay, so I've got this section, your turn, crickets. It's like,
okay.
And so then you feel like the idea is invested from a collaboration. So it's not purely yours. You're stuck in this, I've got this half-done something, but now what do I do?
The other person basically doesn't hold up their end of the bargain? Is that? Other examples of not successful collaborations?
What I can think of would be unsuccessful, not necessarily, or unproductive, but not necessarily unsuccessful. Our goal was to produce an article, nothing came out of it. I think there was a lot of productivity and ideas that I get approved, but the paper I went later. But we didn't actually do a collaborative thing. It was ultimately in the end. We kind of talked about at the beginning, both didn't find a common ground that made sense.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was productive, but it was not successful.
And interesting and fun probably too, right? Yeah.
Disagree.
I would have the same thing. I have had cases like that where what you're doing is really interesting, and I think it really ties in well, and they thought so too, and we started working together, and time went by, and oh yeah, we were going to do that, and more time went by, and now we're not actually working together. So it never really turned into a collaboration. The other part of it is you can get into a collaboration and agree to it and actually set some criteria. Here's what we're going to do. I'll take this part, you take that part, right? And then it doesn't turn out to be successful because, again, they might not hold up their end of the bargain. Or it is because we hear that it's good to get as much published as you can. One of the good ways to do that is to say, yeah, I'll collaborate with you. Will you include me on the project? You need anything else? Well, I said I wanted to collaborate. Isn't that all that we need? Those tend to be associated with less productive collaborations. And that is an urge. I think that is present out there, related to what we were just talking about. You are having to rely on other people than you might be more comfortable doing. And that is what I was saying earlier about you need to maybe be less selfish. I don't know if those are really opposite of each other, but I know some of my collaborators have not been successful in collaborating with other people because their other collaborators just didn't do anything. Or it's like, yes, I tried to work with them, and they just crickets. They didn't produce. And I know that now from my collaboration, and so if there's ever an opportunity for me to potentially collaborate with that person, I'm probably not going to. Maybe that's a mistake on my part, but if one of my collaborators is having difficulty with somebody else, then to me that's a red flag. Okay, wait, there's more challenges or costs to collaborating. It can take a long time to develop. If you think about your current collaborations or those in the past, often they're not forced, right? Have you ever had a forced collaboration? I mean, is that like a arranged marriage or something? Yes, as a graduate student, we are forced into a collaboration, and then we run away from that screaming, never want to work on that project again because it was so aversive. But true, I think deep collaborations, what I meant earlier about the deep collaborations, my experience has been takes a long time to develop, and patience too. And early on, we might not be very productive. So a few of my collaborations were like, these are great ideas, let's do this, let's collect more data. Wait a minute, we've been collecting data for 3 years and we haven't done anything with it. Don't we need to start writing this up? And yeah, let's do that. It took like a long time to get there. But once we got there, then it was very productive and rewarding for us. Here's one of the things I was alluding to before that does come up fairly often, and it would come up in your promotion and tenure potentially, is that perception of you being scattered in your research. Why are you doing research with somebody in health and human performance or human sciences when you're in psychology? Because they're doing interesting stuff, but you don't really have, a national reputation clearly in this area. Which for all of us, if you're on a tenure track and you're going to full professor, that is one of the criteria that they use is a national reputation. Can you have a national reputation as a collaborator? You could, but it could potentially take away. And there have been instances, I'm aware of instances, you might have experienced or heard of this too, where people are criticized because they're actually collaborating. It's not even a joke, but it's kind of sad in a way. In this book that I talked about, this new book that came out about collaboration in psychological science, one of the authors talked about sitting in a promotion and tenure committee meeting where one of the members said something like, yeah, but all the stuff that they published is collaboration. When are they ever going to do anything that's their own? I don't think they should get promoted and tenured. Ouch.
Well, I could agree with that. If they are never lead now,
yes.
And that's a criteria.
Yes.
I could see that. And so I think there's a difference between leading a collaboration
yes.
and just being
always being like, depending on your discipline, second or third author or things like that. And there are ways that you can get around that perception. And so the way I would manage that is to make sure that I do have my clear professional identity. This is my main area, but I'm still collaborating. Doesn't necessarily mean I need to be that. So in some ways you can think of it, I think in our institution, this is the kind of situation where we're in. I don't think our administration, Dr. Bartel, while he was provost, used to say, we all should be collaborating. I think that's a good thing. Why are we talking about it as a bad thing? So you have to kind of juggle that, but you also have to be aware that there may be people thinking, I don't know what you're really doing, and so that is an issue to consider. I think you can manage it by having it more icing on the cake kind of things, and I recommend that to some of my collaborators, like junior level faculty, that you really should have your own disciplinary expertise, and that's where you're primarily productive, right? Because what we're doing doesn't really sound like your area necessarily. However, if you can publish some of these things, that's icing on the cake, right? That's going to put you over maybe the number, if there's a number in your college or in your department or whatever. So it's kind of juggling, balancing act. Another challenge is you have to be organized. You have to have time management skills. If you don't have those, it's going to be harder to collaborate, I think. Yes. There's that give and take that goes along with it. And then finally, any of you ever had disagreements about order of authorship or credit for work put in a collaboration?
I sent an email like that this morning. We have a paper coming out. I said, well, there's 3 students. You only mentioned one of them. What's your threshold for collaboration here? There's 3 PhD students that participate on this. So what are we doing?
Only one of them's included on the paper? Or?
It was just informal. It was me and a student were emailed on this. And so I replied back to my collaborator. I said, you only mentioned one. What about the other 2? And there were varying degrees of work. And so I may agree with what he's going to say, and there should be an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
But if he was fine with it, the more the merrier, especially for students.
And why you thought that was you thought they should have been included?
I wanted to make sure we had that conversation.
Yeah. Okay. And this is at the point where the paper's being written or prepared to be submitted, or is that?
So our contribution as a collaborator was in earlier phase, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want the time effect to erase the contribution.
Yes, and that happens. Yes. Okay, so in other words, you can see that there's like various positives and negatives with collaboration. But overall, like I said at the start, I'm a big fan of collaboration. In consulting here out of the center with especially tenure track faculty, I recommend, if you can, collaborate. Make sure it doesn't, create that perception of being scattered, yes, but it's going to be more interesting, it's going to be more fun, you're going to be more productive. I think the positives far outweigh the challenges or the potential costs with collaboration. And I think that's generally the case, at least among those who have had successful collaborations. They're going to say that. So here's some kind of nitty-gritty things. Some of what the literature suggests, some stuff that I found to be effective. Even in this day and age, I'm in a group right now that's just starting to work together. There's 4 of us, 2 of us here and 2 other faculty at other colleges in the state of Tennessee. And we're just can't even find a time that we can all get together. And therefore, we're not really moving very far on this. We have whatever, I forget, it's like some kind of Google site where we're sharing documents and I post something and it's been there for a month and a half and nobody's responded to it. And it's like, I think we all need to get together and meet. Because when we do that, we brainstorm and we come up with assigning tasks and things like that. So that makes the more distant or more virtual kinds of collaborations more challenging, I think. And that's why, for me at least, having local collaborations has been much more productive and more rewarding. I think it's in part because we can actually sit down frequently and talk about our ideas.
Are you saying in person or live? I have a collaborator in Maryland, and we've been doing Skype or phone with some regularity. And when we were doing that, things were making progress. Now we've kind of gotten away from the schedule. During the summer, we evolved to doing that, and things were really getting some traction. But she's in Maryland, so the cost and time associated with face-to-face is prohibitive.
It is. I was thinking more actually face-to-face, what I mean by. But that is, I was going to say, what's the difference when you said that? Because Skype is kind of like face-to-face, but not exactly.
I wonder if you felt like there was a difference, if you could see them, and because it's one thing to post things in email, it's another thing to hash things out and get some traction.
What do y'all think? Is that?
It's easy to ignore an email, whereas somebody's asking you directly live, you have to answer. So you can ignore an email and it goes into.
Yeah.
I haven't got time. I'll do it next week, and that next week to do what you know. You will whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion is that if you collaborate, to start it off, you do need a face-to-face. I mean, especially somebody you don't know too much.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have regular meetings, doing Skype versus face-to-face,
Yeah.
it's almost the same. But after every once in a while, you probably should meet face-to-face.
Yeah, yeah.
Body language.
I agree.
Body language is just,
Mm-hmm.
cannot be, I guess, communicated through.
It's harder to fake in face-to-face. Huh? That's what I found with one of my longest collaborators who was a mentor for me in graduate school. We collaborated for like 30 years and were very productive. And we got to the point where our phone calls are fine because we know each other so well. And so we're very productive that way. Plus, he's very list-oriented. And so he'll come up, as we're talking, he'll make a list and say, is this right? Is this what you got too? And yeah, I become more that way too. But we really are most productive when we meet at conferences or we actually arrange time to be in person. And because then we have large amounts of time. I mean, large amounts being 4 or 5 hours at a pop. We devote a whole day to, we're just going to meet and talk about our stuff, even though we're at the conference. And you can do more of that, I
I was
think.
going to ask you about that, about conferences, if you have the same discipline or something similar, if you're at a conference, have you found that to be productive if you make time during the conference?
I have. I've done that with existing collaborations, and there have been cases where I'm presenting a poster, and somebody comes by and says, "Hi, I'm so and so," and starts asking about questions, and they're doing something similar. And one particular collaboration that I would say as a kind of a moderately productive, we got a couple presentations. I don't think we published anything, but he was in Japan, and happened to come to this international psychology conference, and very interesting. We were able to collect some Japanese data, and so yeah.
Going back to that posting and stuff, I get a lot of when I present people who are like, I'm so interested in this and this works, and I'm like, this is great, we can find these data, here's my card, here's my thing, go to the first email, and then that's it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why did you waste my time? And I always come back to that, like, why is my time being wasted this way?
Well, at least it wasn't a whole lot of time yet that you've wasted, right? Yeah, I don't know what to say about that because I've had that too. My mentor, the one I was referring to earlier, early on in my career said, "Oh, it looks like somebody was really nice and friendly and talking about our research, and it sounds like we have a collaborator." And he kind of stopped me in my tracks, not purposely, but just casually said, "Oh, I think they were just being nice." Okay, there's a difference. People showing enthusiasm and being nice, and so I think trying to figure out if people are just being, because we are that way, right? If I go to a poster and I spend the time listening to what they've done or read it and stuff, this is really interesting. Yeah, what else are you going to do in the future? And sounds like I might be, but I might just be being nice. So yeah, that does occur.
To the point where we've hashed out. Okay, so this is how your data set is with skeletal material, which I deal with. It's like, oh, this could apply to your data set, and so if we collaborate, then that's great, cool, etc. And so we're already going into how sampling and everything at the poster thing. Here's my card, here's my list. Okay, and then that I'm like, no. If you're offering, like, if we're discussing research design already at the poster, I'm kind of
Interesting. Maybe there's this phenomenon of post-conference lack of commitment or something like that. There might be a research project on that.
I get excited because I'm like, yes, this is great. I can actually move forward on something else, and I'm looking forward to it, and then it just dies. So
You have to study domestic versus international conferences to make a good move. In various locations, Caribbean. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Especially if the university would fund our trips to those. Yes, I hear you, Hiram. Regular contact, if you look at successful collaborations that you've had, that is essential, as we've heard, as you're talking about. I mean, if you had the regular contact, you probably would have moved further along, and because that requires taking some steps and developing the collaboration. One of the things that I do a lot, and I've done this over the years, and I've gotten to the point where I'm now pretty good at this, I think, and that is in any context, not just collaborative context, but like for FLCs or things like that, faculty learning communities, is to take notes. And my collaborations that have not turned out to be successful, if I think back on them, it's like, you know what, none of it, we loved our discussions and we had some great ideas, but nobody was taking any notes. And then time goes by and we forgot what we were talking about. That is just like to me, that's something that you can definitely prevent from happening. I could have prevented from happening. If some of us took some notes, it was easy for us to revisit the ideas that we had instead of having to recreate it again when we did find the time to get together. So I've had that experience. So now I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll take the notes and I'll write something up and let me know what you think.
And then you share it, I assume. Mm-hmm. What I found, like I did this last week in an HOA board meeting. One of the members wasn't there, so I said, oh, hey, here's my notes. And what happened was, that's not what we agreed on. I mean, because we talked about it for 5 minutes. We started at this point, and I'm not actually quite sure where we ended up, but because it was documented, what did we finalize on? And then I think a big thing is probably also to-dos. If you've written down, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, then... Yep.
I do have let me see what my next point was here. Basically, this is what Hiram just said. Striving for clarity about roles and responsibilities and expectations. That is kind of the to-do. Okay, what are you going to do now? And with my mentor, it's the laundry list, as he refers to it as. So here's the things that we're going to do, right? And okay. I have a local group of collaborators here who started up from a faculty learning community. There's 4 of us. And a collaborative group that size has its unique challenges because to me, for a collaboration to be effective, you really need to get to know the other people. And with 4 people, it's like harder to get to know. And you're not really sure if you know everybody. But we've worked together now for like 7 years or so, and we've had 6 or 7 papers. So we average like about a paper a year out of our group. And most of it is cross-disciplinary. It's more like scholarship of teaching and learning. And in that group, we have settled in. We know each other very well. We're very different. One is in agribusiness. One is in university studies. One is in the College of Business. I'm in psychology. But we get along very well together, and we're very willing to carry our weight. And we just kind of emerged out of that, out of working together, to the point now where we're comfortable with that. And we don't even have to press each other and ask. We just say, who would like to take this? And somebody volunteers, typically. And so that's a nice thing to have. 2 of the 4 of those were junior faculty when they first started working in the group. And now they have been promoted and tenured, but they still want to keep going because it's fun and it's interesting, and we stretch ourselves that way. So to me, that's like an ideal to kind of aspire to, even though there's a lot of pragmatics associated with managing a 4-person collaboration, even if it's local. There's more. So I would say, here's where I return to the relationship question. Like in any relationship, commitment, trust, and responsibility, it's the same thing for a collaborative relationship. You said you were going to do this. Yes? Why didn't you do it? I mean, I don't know that I would ever say that to a collaborator. You said you were going to do this. Why didn't you do it? Because that's not kind of my personality. I would say, do we need more time? Or in the group I was talking about, the 4 of us, it's like we've been working on this paper for a year now, and we were supposed to meet last week, and I didn't get anything done on it from like 3 weeks ago when we last met on this. And so I said, is it only me, or did anybody else was anybody else able to work on this? Because if the rest of you did, I'll come in and sit in the meeting. And everybody else came back and said, no, can we put it off for two more weeks? So we put it off like till next week. And the same thing might occur, but we're comfortable in asking that and making those requests. And that's part of the kind of trust and commitment we have to our little group. We don't have a name for our group, by the way, but we've talked about that in the past. Who are we? What do we want to call ourselves? This is a little bit squishy too, I think, but ideally, you want to find people who are committed and willing and ethical and right. So I'm trying to think if I have collaborators where I wasn't really comfortable with what I thought were maybe ethical issues, and in those cases, I started to disengage from that relationship, because that could come back and bite me in some way or another. Plus, I like to think of myself as having these attributes, and I don't think I'd work well with somebody who doesn't have them as strong, I guess. Being judgmental on my part. Do fun stuff with your collaborators, too. To me, that's like really important. You could tell I'm really emphasizing the fun and interesting part of it, but here's what we do. Like the 4-person group that I was talking about. So every time we have a paper that's been accepted for publication, so we've gone through the final revisions and now they say, congratulations, it's been accepted, we celebrate in some way. So that might be we go out to lunch, it might be we go over to the boulevard for an afternoon, or something like that. And then when it actually comes out, we do it again. So we're like constantly looking for reasons to do fun stuff. And that has helped us to keep that. And so I now do that with pretty much all my collaborators. Hey, it just got published. When can we have lunch? And I've never had somebody say, nah, I don't want to do lunch. Why would we want to celebrate that? It's always the thing. Yeah, that's a great thing. So I've consciously tried to do that and build that into my collaborations. And it makes it more fun and more interesting and more rewarding. So last 2 slides are the best practices for managing that come out of this new book that I was talking about. And it's referenced at the end of the presentation, which I'll give you here. These 2 authors are collaborators, and they've pulled together all these other kind of collaborators. But I wanted to run through that list of what those best practices are. It's very interesting, I think. They basically pulled together from the 20 or so chapters that they pulled to edit this book, and came up with some of these principles. One is sharing the data with collaborators. And this is like a technical issue, but you've probably heard of cases where somebody was holding on the data and not sharing it with other people and tinkering with it and altering the data and things like that. That's a real potential issue. And there's a case was it a Dutch psychologist or somebody like this who was like the dean of the college or something, always held on to his data. And they found out that he was like doctoring the data, and he had like very extensive history of funding and publications and stuff. Now he's not working anymore because he was fired when it was discovered. But to me, that's a red flag. If some of my collaborators are not willing to share the data, it's like, well, aren't we collaborators? Why won't you share that data? That would be a red flag. And I'm always willing to take it. In fact, given the instability of how I'm saving the data, it's a good idea to have it in multiple places anyway. And my students, the same thing. For my graduate students who are working on theses, I always ask for their data, just to have it in one way, but also to, if I have questions about how they analyze something, I can go and look at it myself. And they understand that. And I would do the same thing if we were working together with them. Social loafing is a concept that psychologists talk about. That's sometimes also referred to as like free riding, although those are 2 different concepts in the literature. And that is, social loafing is, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be your collaborator. I don't really have time for that. Would you mind taking that section? But of course, I'll still be on the final paper, right? That's a real danger. And to me, that's a danger of stretching yourself too thin, potentially, or coming on to collaborations without really vetting them, without really getting to know the people so much, or bringing people on without really vetting them. That's a danger. I like this one a lot. Be crystal clear about who does what. And I've realized that we do that in my successful collaborations. I try to do that. Who's going to do what? When are you going to do it? Even if we don't get it done the time we said, it's still your responsibility, and we'll get back to that eventually. So clarity, actually being very explicit about what you expect. And of course this. So in your example, Hiram, it's like the very beginning of the project. You couldn't have really done that though, right? Because you didn't know where it was going to go maybe at that point.
Added collaborators, international collaborators since then.
So that's a hard thing to say. You can't really do that at the beginning. You know, it's a tough call, but.
And it feels awkward to be too formal about it. At least I feel like it's an assumption, but if it's not your assumption, although I've done collaboration more on campus where papers were published and I thought my contribution was significant to merit
Yes.
author list, so maybe I should have been more.
Me too. I've had a few of those cases where it wasn't so much maybe collecting the data, but it was analyzing the data, helping to write the results in discussion. But we never actually talked about this. And in one case it was, no, we had you on the presentation that we did at the national conference, and we just wanted to have the two of us on the. Oh, okay. I'm probably not going to collaborate with you anymore. That wasn't my thinking, but that was because my feelings were hurt.
I learned that early, and I guess that may be why. I don't know. I'm just very. I said I know this may be awkward or uncomfortable, and I'd rather rip the bandage off immediately so we know where we stand. So in this orchestra, how do you see that going? And so, doing we have a timeline of presentation, saying, okay, well. I feel like I should be first off on the presentation, but on the paper itself, seeing as though you're going to be contributing more to the literature, review and whatnot, I feel that merits more your first or trading, whichever. If it's a multi-part or something like that, I'm going to go first this first time, you're going to go first in the second, etc. So I think that's being clear. And I honestly, if I'm coming into a collaboration, I always ask, so where do you see me standing, so that I can dedicate the appropriate amount of
that's a good idea.
So that, right now, I spent the morning with a master's student who I'm not going to be able to be on her committee, but I'm helping her with all of her statistics, and it's like, I'm going to lead you through what you're going to do, but I'm not doing any of it. I'm not doing any hand-holding, so you should be writing down all the steps of what you need to do, and you can come back and ask questions, but that's the extent of my input, whereas if it were I was on her committee, it would be a full day of this is how we're going to do it, this is,
Right. And the same thing for research projects. And the group that I was talking about, the 4-person group, we early on, the first paper is like, well, they thought, you should be me. I should be the first author on that because that was really the theme that got us together. And okay, I'll do that. And so I took primary responsibility for that. But I learned this from my mentor, which was we're going to, try to spread the wealth, basically. And if you're in position to do that, all the better. Meaning that, okay, the next paper, I'm going to be the last author of the 4 of us, and whoever takes the lead is going to. And so that group that I was talking about, where we have 7, if you look at what we've done, we're like half and half. There's 2 of us. There are 2 papers I'm first author on, 2 somebody else's, 2, and then the one we're working on right now, the other person is going to be for the second time their second lead author. And you can get to that with more extensive and deeper collaborations, and that's a nice thing to be in a position to have if you get to that point, of course. A few more. Last slide here is what I was alluding to earlier. Tenure and promotion the history is not to reward collaboration. Even though, again, at our institution, it's seen positively by upper administration. But it's in my department, I don't think it's seen necessarily very positively because we're going by that old model of who are you and what makes you special and different and individualistic and unique. And, well, maybe my individualistic, unique contribution is I'm really good at collaborating. But that argument doesn't really carry much weight, I don't think, in many promotion and tenure.
I love that. You need to bring grant money in. The only way you can get grant money in is through collaboration. So you can't get a solo author because you need to be bringing that grant money in to do the research that they want you to do, and then you're stuck in that.
So this is more of an institution level recommendation for best practices for collaboration is actually to reward that. And at present, I don't think there's anything explicit about collaboration. Although, like I said, in the past at least, Dr. Bartell was very upfront about that. He said, when I see collaboration, I see that as a good thing. I don't think that filtered down to most departments. I think we're still pretty much in.
My department is, we don't care where on the author list you are, which to me says collaborate, because you don't have to be first author.
but be productive too. Yeah. What is your department? Computer science? Yeah. Maintain open lines of communication. That was something we already talked about before. Collaboration as social support. This is getting back to the mushy psychological social stuff that I was talking about. And the last point is mentoring as a form of collaboration. I think those last two are interlinked because you can serve as a mentor in your capacity by developing collaborations, and your collaborators can also mentor you depending on where you are. And so that's a valuable thing. The social support part of it is, the examples I can think of with that is some of my collaborators that are more individual. So I have several it's the two of us, and we've worked together and been productive on various projects. And I can think, oftentimes when we meet, we're supposed to talk about the research. That was what we had in the schedule book. That's what I had. But we end up talking about, you can't believe what happened in my department just now, or whatever. And my chair is like the worst chair in the world, or whatever. And so we end up talking like that. And that's okay, because that's a venting kind of thing, and collaborations serve that. I haven't really done that. I don't think I've been the one, fretting or whatever in those contexts, because I'm far enough along, I guess. But it does then mix with the mentoring component. So I think if you talk to my collaborators here, a lot of them would say, I'm like a mentor in my collaborations with them. Partly that's because I'm a more senior faculty member and I've been here a long time and that kind of thing. But that's pretty much it. It is pretty much it. The last page are the references, which I will give you here on the handout. The bottom is they switched the authors, the Borgaida and Zweigenhaft. They wrote the final chapter, and so they switched the order. So in the citations, it'll appear differently, right? That's one of the things that you can do.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And then I did have one more slide, which is just the thank you slide. And to practice what I'm preaching, thank you. And wait, there's more. Future collaborators are welcome. I'm always looking for collaborators, just because it's so fun.
Responsible collaborator.
That too. Yeah.
Do you want the other kind?
No, well, no. What I do.
You don't want the other kind. That's a drain.
No, I start talking to people, and then I think, I don't know that I would be able to work with you very well, but I think you might be able to work with somebody else who's closer maybe to your interests.
I think about that sometimes. I think about people with similar interests and similar research areas and think, I don't know if our personalities necessarily match very well. Is that a component of it, though? Think about that, say, we might draw the time the same, and it wouldn't be fun.
Would you? Do you? Have you had personality clashes with your previous collaborations? I have collaborators that I don't think I could live with, let's put it that way.
But you could research it.
But that's fine, because I don't have to live with them. And so, I mean, really kind of extremist, I don't know. I bite the bullet in a few cases where it's because they're very knowledgeable and skilled and good at what they do, but maybe their personality is a little bit, again, being judgmental here on my part, but a little bit questionable, say. But I have not found that to interfere with the productivity of my collaboration. If it does, then I just end the collaboration if I can.
Thank you.
Well, good luck.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Good luck on your collaborations. Yes. Thank you for coming.